Whoa. Whoa, where's my pen? There it is. Hello. Hello. Time for some more old English courtroom drama. This is case 5, which should be the last case of the first game. So I'm expecting this to be a good one. Let's get the game switch. Oh no, not that. Nope, that was the wrong thing. There we go. Game. Alright, so from the last time we successfully won the Soseki Natsume case. I'm assuming he's not going to die by die by mysterious circumstances. Let's hope not. And we have moved in with Hairlock Sholmes and living in his attic now. It actually sounds pretty fun. So let's see where the story goes from here. I keep getting like random. I probably shouldn't even ask about this, like random follows from people with numbers, and then they kind of don't really follow me. It's like, whatever. Anyway, let's begin. Oh. Did I get a selection screen before? I don't remember getting a selection screen before. Oh, this is the selection screen for the things. Anyway, this is what we're doing. The Adventure of the Unspeakable Story. Yes. I don't know why it brought me to this menu. The Hound of the Baskervilles.
It's coming! Sholmes's cry pierced through the thick wall of fog around us. Wisps of vapor flowed over the pistol as I cocked it, and I waited, breathlessly, in the stillness. The silence lasted for what seemed an eternity, until, at last, it appeared. From the shadows of the cloud, an enormous beast sprang out upon us. A hound it was, but not such a hound as any mortal has ever seen. Its eyes glowed with a smoldering glare. The whole of its ox-sized body was outlined in white-hot flames. Its rumbling pant and hideous howl, so terrified was I that I began to tremble with fear. "Look well, Wilson," Sholmes declared, gazing upon the mystical beast. "For this is the diabolical Hound of the Baskervilles."
It might actually be a Barquest. Barquest? Barquest is a type of demon dog. There's actually many stories and legends about demon dogs all throughout the world, but especially in England and Great Britain. Black hounds are usually a omen of doom for anybody that sees them. At least that's the way the legends go. I'm just spouting stuff off. I haven't read the Hound of the Baskervilles story from the actual Sherlock Holmes story, but that's kind of where the legend comes from. Anyway, our first 2 months in London passed by in the flesh. In that disconcerting courtroom experience we were first thrown into on the day we arrived in the country, and in Soseki-san's terrible ordeal that had followed closely behind, we had emerged victorious. However, there's always something else around the next bend. What is it this time? There then came an abrupt end to our opportunities to appear in court. Oh no, the judge has died. Oh, that's probably not what it is. Which was hardly surprising, of course, since I was nothing more than an amateur, an unknown student of law from a faraway land. So life in our little office was very quiet. That is. Until London was destroyed and attacked by aliens from Mars. Oh wait, that's a different story. Never mind. Until it was shattered one day by that fateful telegram. Naruhodo's legal consultancy. You see, he's not actually a lawyer, he's just a consultant. By the way, I had one of those, delicious Reese's peanut butter cups while we were watching that movie there. That's what the crinkling sound was. So delicious. That morning, I was woken by the unreserved knocking on the door by the telegram boy. After he'd gone, Susato's butt was burned on the stove. Susato-san's behavior became very obviously strange. Susato-san. Yeah, she teleports in front of you. And scares the bejesus out of Naruhodo, and he thus has a heart attack and dies, and the game ends. Yes! Is it time to leave for court already? Let me see. What case is it today? I don't think I'm scheduled to defend anyone at the moment, am I? Oh, no, of course not. How silly of me. That would imply we actually had work to do. But I think Iris said she would make us breakfast this morning. So shall we go down to Mr. Sholmes' suite? Yes. Iris makes the most delicious breakfast food. If only I knew what breakfast food was, I could use a better description. It's food you eat when you break fast. She does, doesn't she? And once our bellies are full, we can leave for court in fighting fit form. And become the heroes of the London streets and fight crime in the shadows at night. We could be like the superheroes or something like that, and dress in tights. Let me see, what case is it today? Here we go again. Oh, we can examine. But first, always, we must present my armband. Hey, take a look at my armband. Don't you think it's cool now? It means a great deal to me, you know, that you cherish his armband so, and wear it each time you appear in court. Well, it's very important to me. It's what shows that I'm a lawyer. And whenever I wear it, I feel as though it gives me strength through Kazuma's soul. Oh wait, never mind, his soul is in the sword, never mind. Ignore what I said. I actually can't be without it, especially when I'm at a critical point in the trial. But just the other day, I noticed you wearing it when we went to visit that park. I really like it. I don't want to... It looks stylish. I don't want to take it off. Sometimes I forget to take it off. Not really. I just leave it on intentionally because I really like it. I think it's cool. It's spring at last, and the weather is warmer now. But I love the smell of the fire and the steam rising from the kettle. Oh, would you like some tea, Naruhodo-san? Thank you, Susato-san, but I'm alright for now. with the green tea Susato-san makes me from time to time, and Iris's unique herbal infusions. This place is a paradise for a true tea lover. Green tea is such a wonderful accompaniment to British tea cakes, don't you think? Sure, whatever you say. We have a tea set here. So this is the tea set that Susato-san brought with her from Japan. Let's hope she hasn't noticed me slipping sugar and milk into my cup when she makes it. It's just so bitter! Can you imagine putting, like, sugar and milk in green tea? I've never heard of anybody doing that. I mean, maybe that's just something that I haven't heard of anybody ever doing before. I know sugar, milk, and creamer and black tea, but it's like in Asian green tea, I've never really heard of that before. I mean, yeah, you can put some sweetener like honey in green tea to kind of sweeten it up a little bit, but milk, I've never really... You know what, ignore what I said, I don't really know anything about tea, so just... forget what I said. I don't know what I'm talking about. Tea is a drink to be enjoyed, Naruhodo-san. Stop talking about it if you know a damn thing about tea. You really don't have to force yourself to drink it, you know. I don't like to see you screw up your face, so... Okay. We've only been here in London for about 2 months, but my desk is starting to look a little messy already. You could tidy up once in a while. Or maybe you could do that too, you know. Because you're so good at tidying stuff up back in that ship. So I was like, I'll just assume that you're good at tidying stuff up, you know. Susato-san, I always say, making a mess is a small sacrifice to pay for being able to further your studies. And time spent tidying up is time you can't devote to the same cause. So choose one or the other. And time spent on ridiculous arguments is time that could be better spent on some simple housework. She wins, but I'm supposed to be the lawyer here. This must be the telegram. Let's see. Ah! No, you mustn't look at that. Not under any circumstances. Alright, I won't. I'm sorry, Naruhodo-san, but you can be very mischievous at times. Then put the telegram away if you don't want people looking at it. Don't leave it in the open where it's so obvious. Do you know, I've never seen inside your room there, Susato-san. I never even peeped inside. What are you keeping in there? I should think so, too. A young maiden's private chamber is a place of bittersweet secrets, you know. Whatever you say, young maiden. Is there an aquarium in here? We were lucky to find that old aquarium left behind here. The prawns we put in there are doing rather well, and the anemones, too. Where did you find anemones? Like, I can kind of understand finding prawns, but anemones? It's a wonderful invention, isn't it? The sea, behind glass inside your room, it's like a box with water in it. I mean, I don't think anybody's ever thought of inventing something like that before. Another example of Great Britain's greatness. A box with water in it, yay. Having to clean it out and change the water isn't so great though, isn't it? True that. Alright. Tell me about the telegram. So, what was it about? The telegram that was delivered this morning, I mean. Oh, a telegram? You know, the one you just shouted at me about? I don't know what you're talking about, Excuse me, young maiden, please don't play dumb with me. I'm the lawyer here. Sorry, but you're not going to get away with that. Well, I didn't think I would. Actually, don't give it a moment's thought. It's nothing interesting. Boring, in fact. Ahem. It was just a boring old telegram. That's 3 times now she's tried and failed to convince me it was nothing. I promise that I'll tell you about it at some point. Alright, I understand, you're just not gonna tell me. I suppose Soseki-san will have a ride back in Japan by now, won't he? Unless he had an unfortunate accident where the ship sank and he died. We might never know what happened to him. Yes, I should think so. He left immediately after that terrible ordeal. Which would mean he should have completed the voyage already, or be just a few days away. A fortnight ago we had that very long telegram from him. Do you remember? Complaining of seasickness? But by and large, it seems the voyage has been going well. Or has it? Is something wrong, Naruhodo-san? I was just wondering. What might have become of Soseki-san had he stayed in London, that's all. He probably would have been bitten by a vampire. And disappeared. Yeah. You mean, as regards Lord Van Zeeks, the Reaper? Yes, I can't help wondering if seasickness would have paled into insignificance in that case. What is it that they say? That no one who stands in the dock can be saved from the Reaper, right? Like the murder of Mr. Mcgildit here, or his death, still needs to be investigated. I mean, come on. That obviously sounds like that was a murder. So why are we not investigating this? Like the way that nightmarish trial ended on the very first day we arrived in London. Even 2 months on, the cause of that dreadful fire is still a mystery. Yes, but at least Soseki-san is safely out of the country now. Presumably that means Lord Van Zeeks cannot cross water. That means he must be a vampire. That the curse of the Reaper can only take effect within the confines of the city of London, perhaps. Even if that's the case, it's little comfort. I have a terrible sense of foreboding. If the legend of the Reaper is to be believed, it would mean he wields the sword of justice himself. Or he could just be, you know, a devil, like a vampire or something like that. Come to think of it, I wonder what he's been up to these past 2 months. Sleeping in his coffin in a castle somewhere in the basement, just waiting for his time to awaken again to find a new defendant to attack. Surely not wielding that sword against more acquitted defendants. No, I don't think so. Apparently, Lord Van Zeeks hasn't appeared in court once since our last encounter. It's like he's waiting for you to be in court again. What a coincidence. It's almost as if, like, he's waiting for you to be in court specifically for some reason. Oh. Yes, since Soseki-san's trial, he's withdrawn from judicial service again, it seems. Really? Just like before, when he wasn't seen in court at all for several years. So it's just been me who's had to face him in his recent spate of trials, then. Ugh, just my luck. Or just a really bad coincidence. I wonder if luck doesn't come into it. Sorry? What was that? Oh, nothing. Never mind. Morning, Runo. Morning, Susie. Good morning, Iris. Iris. What is it, Runo? What is that terrible noise? It sounds like a cat being strangled. It's not quite the sound of a cat being strangled. But it's still pretty bad. Ah, yes, you did notice that, didn't you? I gotta figure out a good voice for Iris yet. I really haven't got anything good for her yet. Hurley isn't the best form, Hurley isn't well, I keep messing that line up. Hurley isn't in the best form this morning, it seems. Hello. Hello, Mr. Sholmes? Good morning. Good morning to die, perhaps. Has something happened, Mr. Sholmes? You look miserable, and the way you were playing the violin before. My analytical mind is dead. Music is dead. The world is dead. Damn this blanched existence. That's all it is, my dear fellow. Nothing of consequence. I'm afraid I don't understand. Well, Iris, isn't it time we ate? Some dry toast and insipid coffee for me, if it's not too much trouble. Cat. Oh look, it's Wagahai. What? Wagahai. Wagahai? Good morning, boy. There must be some sort of tiny door for cats to use. It's a cat door. But how did it get there? Well, somebody built it into the door. Well then, everyone, time for breakfast. Oh, wonderful. Let me help you, Iris. It would indeed be a fine day to die. Ah, I knew something looked different. Something's missing from Mr. Sholmes' desk. There's a massive contraption he had there the last time. Excuse me. Fire burning comfortingly in the grate again today. It's a very different feeling to a Japanese hibachi, somehow. Oh, look at that photographic print of a lady displayed on the mantelpiece. Could it be? Yes, it must be. It's the woman. Oh, how exciting. What woman? Is that supposed to mean something to me? What woman? I got an achievement for that, I don't know why. It looks like that huge metal chest is being used as a table for tea and coffee. Seems very sturdy with an equally sturdy lock. Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't go around opening things. I always have to keep an eye on you, don't I? You're very mischievous. How do you come to that conclusion? I'm a lawyer, I like to investigate things. It's my job. Look at Mr. Sholmes' desk. It's completely clear. Isn't that enormous machine usually on it? We can never hope to understand what goes on in the great detective's mind, Mr. Naruhodo. It's like a giant black void of a mystery. Us humans can never comprehend what goes on in his head. Why? Next time we're invited, we might find he's vacated the entire suite. That's scarily plausible, actually. There's all sorts on these shelves. Chemistry apparatus, books, papers, and lots of things I've never seen before. And though I saw them the last time I was here. It's all heaped up so high, I can't help feeling that the whole lot is going to topple at any moment. Oh, it's such a charmingly untidy collection of paraphernalia, isn't it? Weren't you just complaining about how my desk was all untidy and messy upstairs, Susato? And it's like, oh, Mr. Sholmes' mess is so much better. It just looks messy to me, like my desk. But you, Mr. Naruhodo, must learn to tidy up after yourself. No favoritism there, then. Come to think of it, I haven't seen Iris doing much writing recently. There's paper already set up in the typewriter, look. Look, as if she's about to start. That reminds me, when I mentioned that Iris was in the process of writing a full-fledged novel, Mr. Natsumi was most impressed. Ah yes, Mr. Natsumi. That's what I'll be doing too, once I'm back in Japan, he said, through tightly clenched fist and teeth, as if he was very, very constipated. That's a charming little white shelf, and full of charming little bottles too, with charming little medicines inside. Ooh, what's this in this bottle here? Oh, this liquefied aspirin. What's in this bottle? Oh, it's Radifor. Let's throw that shit out. What's in this bottle? Opium. But the contents of them aren't quite so charming, it seems. Science is the future, Mr. Naruhodo, you can't deny it. I'm saving my money so that I can buy some chemistry apparatus as well. Law, chemistry, takedown throws. What diverse skills you boast, Mr. Susato. As useful as they are, I'm not sure that my throwing skills are worthy of inclusion in that list. This is where Iris notes down ideas, isn't it? Let's see, what does it say today? The Boscombe Valley Mystery. Ooh, how intriguing. It must be the title of Iris's latest work. Oh my! I wonder what fantastic tale awaits us. Suzawa-san looks like an angel, but I bet she's dreaming of the most unsavory crime you could imagine. Crime. Iris's beautiful tea set is there on the table as usual. A cup of one of her special herbal blends always helps me to relax when I'm feeling the strain on the toilet. The English pastime of tea has many similarities with our own tea ceremony customs, don't you think? It's the idea of hospitality behind it. That's the essence of tea. And also you can just drink tea. You can just drink it, too. These are all mementos of Mr. Sholmes' past cases, I think. If he'd been involved in my case, I wonder if the beefsteak from La Carnival would be on display here. Oh, that was a long time ago. I miss steak. A mystery shoe, a curious hammer, some mysterious dancing man, a busted Napoleon. What do they all add up to? It adds up to the collection of a madman. Ah, what an entrancing collection. Looks like an untidy assortment of junk to me. Rather likes what's on my own shelves. Well, you really ought to learn to keep your things in order, Mr. Naruhodo. Tidiness is key. No favoritism there at all. Okay. I know what'll cheer you up, Mr. Sholmes. Look at my armband. Mr. Sholmes, could I ask for your opinion about this? What do you think? You allure me to raise my languid head with the promise of some mental exaltation. Yet in my morbid depression, I am confronted with the most mundane of problems. Oh. My mind finds greater stimulation in the unforgiving monotony of the floor than in your miserable offering. Always glad to help. Oh, my head weighs heavy on my shoulders. I guess he doesn't like it. I didn't really examine Iris, did I? Wagai. Mr. Natsumi's cat seems to have settled into his new home then. Oh, yes! I've become very attached to little Waggy. It would appear his previous owner has completely forgotten to him. Cats are unfeeling creatures, their mews as empty as the hearts of the muses. If Mr. Natsumi had no intention of taking Waggy back to Japan, I wonder why he kept him in the first place. I expect he would have taken him if he could, but you know, those Russian ships, they don't like pets on board. Except for snakes. But pets are strictly forbidden aboard steamships in our experience, especially Russian ones. And for good reason. Terrible things can happen if the rules of passage are not obeyed. Well, I don't mind, because Waggy is adorable. Meow. Yes, she really is. Oh yes, what about the door? I don't remember seeing that tiny thing in the main door before. Where did that come from? Oh, you noticed. You are observant, Runo. Look, I used this. It's my latest invention. It's called a door gun. It puts a door into anything. Into a wall, into a door, into a brick wall, into a window, and into people's heads too if I put it on their heads, and it'll probably put a door in their head. What is that? I call it the cat flapomat. Gosh, a machine for making doors just for cats. It really is a door gun. That's right, it can make a cat flap for a little furry friend like Waggy in seconds. And it can do it in any door at all, no matter what's it made of. It's very powerful, you see. Wouldn't it have been quicker just to make the cat flap, rather than making a machine to make the cat flap? You're missing the point, Ryunosuke. Well, yes, maybe. But now I can make cat flaps anywhere I like. Including in your head, too, if I wanted to. Oh, I think it'd be wonderful to do that. Go ahead, Iris, give it a try. You must make one for us in the door of our office upstairs, Iris. She really knows how to come up with unconventional inventions, this girl. This child. Alright, Mr. Sholmes, why are you depressed? You seem to be very unhappy this morning, Mr. Sholmes. What's happened? It used to be the case that in my hands, this violin sung like the dawn chorus. Its melisant tones would make flowers bloom. It would? But now, the muses are unamused with me. The goddesses of music have thrown me over. Whatever do you mean, Mr. Sholmes? For hours I have belled. For days even. Through the night I have endeavored to no avail. That sound, my tone, is lost. That brilliant, clear, unwavering tone. No, gone forever. No more recitals of unbridled emotion. Well, you haven't been practicing that much, have you, Hurley? Don't worry, I'm sure we'll come back to you in time. Heed my words, Mr. Naruhodo. The goddesses of the arts are fickle. One day, they bestow genius on a man. The next, they unmercifully withdraw it. Oh. Dear. Ah, why is this happening to me? If they take the turn I have for the violin from me, what is left, for pity's sake? What is left? Deduction, perhaps? Isn't that what you're known for? Mr. Sholmes, I don't like to pry, but your desk looks rather empty today. Ah, well done, Miss Susato. Your observational skills do you credit. Oh, no, Mr. Sholmes. They pale into insignificance when compared to yours. You'd struggle not to notice, wouldn't you? You mean Hurley's great analytoscope? That's at Windybank's now. Sorry, it's at a windy bank? No, Windybank's. The pawnbrokery. Pawn? What? What is that? I don't know what that is. You mean you pawned that enormous machine of yours? It has some considerable value, you see. Quite undeservedly. But isn't it a very important machine for your work? I do wish you had consulted us if your situation had become so desperate. I should have gladly passed what little income I have to you. Dear Madame, things are far from desperate. But the pawnbroker has your wonderful machine. How can it be anything but desperate? Making use of a pawnbrokery is quite ordinary here in London, I assure you. Is it? It doesn't sound very ordinary to me, at all. It would seem that neither of you fully understand how pawnbroking works. Oh, well, what's to understand exactly? So let's explain how a pawn shop works, for those who may not know. What did you mean when you said we didn't fully understand how pawnbroking works? To the people of London, pawnbrokeries are akin to banks. Banks? What are those? On Mondays, merchants relinquish their finest jackets and trappings to the pawnbroker of choice. With the money they receive in return, they are able to trade happily through the week. And then on Sundays, they go to recover their things using the money they've earned. I had no idea. This has been a fascinating lesson for us, even though I don't really understand the thing you just said. Everyone does it, you see, especially people in inner London. And should they have money to spare, they would purchase another fine jacket. So it's only for jackets? Jackets? Not to wear, obviously, but to pawn, should the need arise. Oh, how ingenious. So whenever we have something that's getting in the way, we leave it at Windybanks, you see. A pawnbrokery can be thought of as an extremely secure vault. Who would have thought that even pawnbrokers are different here in Great Britain? Of course, you have to watch really with it. Sometimes he pawns things he really shouldn't. Like myself one time. He tried to pawn me off. Don't you, Hurley? Don't you? What does it matter? The world is dead to me now. Oh, what was that? Did somebody... Ryunosuke, did you step on the cat? Wugahai. What was that? Oh no! Wugahai's tangled up in your violin. I think he thinks it's a toy. No. What's he doing to it? What is that? Those motions he's making? His hip is moving against it. Uh-oh. This could be bad. Oh dear, Mr. Sholmes' precious violin. Why should I care? What? Don't you care that your violin is being... assaulted? I shouldn't be surprised. Yet the cat is a more accomplished musician than I, now. I don't think that's what the cat is doing. Mr. Sholmes really is in poor spirits, isn't he? Well, anyway, I'll put it back where it lives. Shall I, Hurley? Out of the cat's reach if possible. Maybe we should assess the damage. Where's the violin? So this is the violin, is it? It's a Stradivarius. One of the finest violins in the world, made by the renowned Italian luthier, Antonio Stradivari. Oh, I see. It doesn't really look like anything special to me. At least not in this time period. In 100 years, it could be kind of valuable, you know. Another century it could be. I happened upon it covered in dust, languishing in a pawn shop down a nondescript back alley. The broker had no idea of its value, so I was able to purchase it for a mere 55 shillings. How honorable of you. And until today, it has been my faithful companion in every great Paganini-inspired performance I have made. I ask you, is there reason to live in a world devoid of music? To tolerate this blanched existence? No. There is none. Mr. Sholmes. What, dear madame? What? My thoughts are preoccupied with fancies of release from this dull routine. Well, it's about the violin. It looks very different to normal, don't you think? What do you mean, Miss Susato? Oh, Susie's right. It's the murder weapon. Oh, wait, wait, I don't know what I'm saying. I was getting ahead of myself. Yes, the tone of the wood is completely different. And that's not all. I'm sure there was no crack here before. Wait, it's not even the right size, is it? What's this? I think it might be a miniature cello. Mr. Sholmes, you've been had. I'm terribly sorry to have to tell you this, Mr. Sholmes, but that instrument isn't a violin at all. It's a viola. Then what? I believe it's an entirely different instrument called a viola. I was just joking. I didn't think it was actually a viola. But yeah, okay. It is easy to mistake a violin for a viola. They're very similar instruments. What? What? Ah, Mr. Sholmes, you're right. You are quite right. This isn't my faithful Stradivarius. So what? Pray, is this piece of string flotsam? Not your faithful performing partner, then. Ah, I see what must have happened. You gave it to the pawn shop, didn't you? You do, Iris? Let me guess, the pawn shop. This is just a simple mix-up. Sounds like Iris might be able to tell us exactly what's happened if we ask her. Is it in the court record? No, it isn't. Okay. What do you mean by a mix-up, Iris? Please tell us. Well, you see, this viola, I mean, was at Winnibank's until last week. At the pawnbroker's. Not Mr. Sholmes' beloved musical partner. There is a proverb from the East with which you are no doubt familiar, my dear fellows. Always let a beloved child travel. I don't think I've ever heard that proverb before. Yes, indeed. So you sent your beloved violin to the pawnbrokers in the hope that it would experience personal growth. Oh, what a wonderful idea. Last week I pawned my great analytoscope in order to release my precious instrument. But it would appear Mr. Winnibank mistakenly furnished me with this tawdry fiddle instead. But my ears cannot be deceived by the hollow timbre of this piece of timber. No, but your every sense was deceived by the fact that it just had strings. So, a fine state of affairs this is. And why I always say, Mr. Naruhodo, never trust a pawnbroker. They will try to fiddle you every time. And then why do you trust a pawnbroker with your stuff? But earlier you told us that you could think of a pawnbrokery as an extremely secure vault. I sense contradictions. Come, Mr. Naruhodo. Dilly-dallying will get you nowhere. Sorry? Crunching your toast without a vacant aspect? Pressing your coffee so obtusely? Are you not a little embarrassed by your own conduct, considering the urgency with which we are faced? We must visit Mr. Winnibank's brokery at once. That's right, isn't it, Mr. Sholmes? Precisely, Mr. Susato. Without a moment's delay. But I haven't finished my bacon and eggs. My dear fellow, surely you do not still intend to crunch your bacon with an increasingly vacant aspect, to fresh your egg over more obtusely, ever more obtusely. Alright, say no more, let's go then. Don't worry, Bruno. I'd be happy to heat it up for you again later. Oh, thank you, Iris. As it happens, I am rather curious to see what a British pawnbrokers looks like. Time for adventure. Hold on a second. Okay. Off to adventure. Oh, we actually have 2 locations. Oh, let's go to Baker Street first. Look at all the different things in the windows of this shop. Ah, that's Windybank's, the pawnbrokery. It looks much smarter than a pawnbroker's in Japan, doesn't it? Yes, you're right. I find pawn shops at home rather inapproachable, personally. It reminds me of tearfully parting with my favorite fountain pen. I felt so miserable. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger, Mr. Naruhodo. Like the many times I have attempted to kill you, you have become stronger each time. It's already been 2 months since we started taking lodgings here above Mr. Sholmes' office. I still can't quite believe it. I never expected things would turn out like this. Oh, I know. To actually be sharing accommodation with the world's greatest detective. If I ever find myself before a court of law now, I will have not one regret. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'd be happy to defend you, of course. I guess there's nothing else to look at here. So this is a British pawnbrokery. Oh my! There are all sorts of tools and contraptions in here that I've never laid eyes on before. Ah, Susato-san. And that spark of wonder in your eyes. You can't wait to scour the shelves, can you? I get the impression you enjoy places like this. Oh yes. I don't know why, but seeing such a lot of things I don't understand is a real thrill for me. My dear fellows, let us not forget why we are here. Oh, Mr. Sholmes. We are calling on matters of business, not pleasure. And clearly Mr. Sholmes means business too, judging from the spark of fury in his eyes. Ah, Mr. Sholmes, sir. Welcome back. Did you hear that brazen welcome? Well, yes, we are potential customers after all. We are disgruntled customers, Mr. Naruhodo, and it's time to inform Mr. Windybank of our ire. Come, the fight is afoot. I want to look around first. What are you doing, my dear fellow? We are not here to browse for interesting curios. We have come to teach this broker a lesson. Oh, but there are just so many fascinating items. Looks as though we'll have to talk to Mr. Windybank first before you can explore in here, Miss Susato. Can't get past him. Hey, Mr. Windybank, what you think of my armband? Mr. Windybank, about this, not that I'm pawning it, but what do you think of it? Does it look good? What's the value of it? Yeah, let me see. I'll give you 2p for it. No, I don't want to pawn it. I wonder, could I ask you something? Ah, a gentleman from the east, I see. Yes, that sable suit. I suppose I could offer you 6p for it. Without wishing to offend, that tone is somewhat dull. Sorry? Aha! Over your splendid attire, ma'am. 5 guineas. No less. The colors are exquisite, the design exotic. Eastern artistry at its finest, may I say. Oh my, 5 guineas you say? How interesting. Why do I feel as though I've suffered some sort of defeat here? Actually, I was hoping to ask you about your business. I've heard it said that pawnbrokeries are used rather like banks here in London. Yes, sir, indeed. Many of my customers utilize the establishment as you describe. I appraise their items and offer them a proportionate loan and 2 months of secure stowage. If in that time they repay the original sum to me plus the agreed interest, their items are happily returned. But what happens if they don't pay you the money? Then the items are offered for sale in my shop, as you can see on the shelves behind me. So you never sell items before the 2 months has passed, then? That's right, ma'am. That's right. This means some considerable responsibility rests on my shoulders. Should a customer's precious belongings be lost, the only recompense for me is to end it all. The very idea, Mr. Windibank, is an absurdity. One should never talk of one's demise so casually, like me just a moment ago. Says the man who was telling us all it was a good day to die only this morning. Let us not forget that I have already helped you take measures to ensure such a tragedy never occurs. Oh, what sort of measures? I engineered a simple device, which Mr. Windibank has installed here in his shop. I call it the Red-Handed Recorder. Is that not so, Mr. Windibank? What was that deep sigh about? Oh, let's talk about the violin. Naturally, you shall recall this, which I retrieved from you some days ago. Yes? This second-rate fiddle is not my faithful instrument, Mr. Windibank. The color of the wood is different. It has holes in it. It's not even the same size. A wonderful summary of our observations, Mr. Sholmes. I'm so very sorry, sir. How utterly unforgivable of me. An inexcusable mistake for a pawnbroker. There's only one way to make amends. Run away? And grab a gun? I shall have to take my own life. That is not a acceptable solution to the problem. I don't think that will be necessary, do you? If I may, just one thing before I pop off. Ah, yes? It was you, Sir Mr. Sholmes, who took it upon himself to remove the item the other day, I believe. Sorry? As I recall, I entered the storeroom to fetch your violin when I heard, "Ah, there it is." You did. And when I turned to controvert you, you had taken the viola and left, sir. However, there can be no doubt that the blame lies firmly at my own door for allowing you to leave. So I shall not grumble or grouse any longer. May this guilt die with me. No, stop, my dear fellow. This fault is mine. Put the gun down. There we go. Phew. It would appear that the fight is over. I do humbly apologize, Mr. Windibank. Evidently, my questionable disposition precipitated this tragedy. Well, you wouldn't be Mr. Sherlock Sholmes without that. Questionable disposition, now would you? I do believe you may be right, sir. It's either laugh or cry, I suppose. You are, it must be said, one of my more challenging customers. I needn't remind you of the peculiar collection of items you brought through my door in the past. Oh? Peculiar items. In the extreme, ma'am. For example, the unpublished manuscript of an eponymous work, the novels of Sholmes or some such. Oh my! A new full-fledged novel? And unpublished? A story I have yet to read, you mean? Ah, forgive me. Wait, before you die, you must tell me more. Then you can die. I must know more. Tell me everything. Wow, Susato-san is really fired up now. Is there really an unpublished story under this very roof? Well, one day the gentleman here brought in an old metal chest, you see. I should like to entrust this to your care for a while, Mr. Windybank. For a chest like that, 1 shilling, sir. Not a farthing more. It houses something of very great value indeed. The latest manuscript, recounting the adventures of one Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Sholmes, I mean. I beg your pardon. A manuscript? You wish to deposit a manuscript? Indeed I do, for I am confident it will be quite safe here. And that was that. As such, Mr. Sholmes' latest tale of otherworldly mystery lies dormant in my storeroom. Mr. Sholmes, is that really true? Do I sense that someone doesn't want to talk about this? I continue to pay your fee, do I not? Then kindly continue to store my belongings securely. Of course, sir, of course. They're safe and sound with me, I assure you. On my life. This is all very strange. Can you, like, put the gun down? What on earth is a red-handed recorder? Use your eyes, my dear fellow. There are 2 just below the ceiling. I can see what appears to be a camera attached to some sort of timing device. Very astute. It is indeed a camera, furnished with some 100 pieces of celluloid film. And every 30 minutes precisely, the camera automatically records the appearance of the shop. You know, back in the time this happened, that is a lot of film to go through. And I can't imagine how expensive that is. It's not like, oh, like a video cassette or thing like that. No. Photographic film was not exactly cheap stuff to have back then. Here, I have an example I can show you. At 4 a.m. Oh yes, a print from the camera set to record the activity at the shop counter. Here's a picture of a dog. I developed a special type of film so sensitive, it produces a crystal clear image even in the darkness. Wow, okay, that is like super film. Even by today's standards, that would be like super film. Really, that's extraordinary. Yes, you can clearly see the counter and the door behind it. Look. So you see, were someone to enter the premises with ill intent, his identity would be summarily exposed. But did you not say that the photographic prints were taken at 30-minute intervals? Indeed, as you say, my dear madame. Then what if the incident were to occur in between times? One could only say, that would be a cruel twist of fate. I must confess your devices have been giving me some cause for distress of late. I beg your pardon, Mr. Windybank. Surely they are anything but distressing. Reassuring is the word. It's the cost of the film, sir. You most graciously placed not one, but 2 cameras in my shop, after all. Which means I must pay for nigh on 100 utterly useless prints every single day. This poor man. That adds up really fast. I'm afraid the cost of the film will break me before I'm very much older. Nevertheless, a small price to pay to ensure the safety of my preferred pawnbrokery, no? Also, apparently Mr. Sholmes is the only person who has developed this super film too, so he's buying this film from Mr. Sholmes. This super film. My dear fellows, we verge on an age where safety and security come at a price. Oh, heaven help us. Now then, Mr. Sholmes, allow me to return your precious violin. Ah, the very thing. Thank you, Mr. Windybank. Perhaps this might mark the end of the peculiar items you try to pop, Because if anything were to happen to one of them, this would be the only answer. I really think you ought to stop waving that gun around. Someone could get hurt. Fear not. Sorry. I've only loaded a single bullet, so no one but myself could possibly be harmed. That's not really what I meant. Good day to you, then, Mr. Windybank. It's been a pleasure as always, Mr. Sholmes. Okay, we're just gonna leave him like that. So, Mr. Naruhodo, everything's good, right? Now we can go explore at last. Look at that enormous ledger open on the counter there. Mr. Windybank is, if nothing else, very particular about recording the items he accepts. He'd have to be, otherwise he'd get himself into all sorts of trouble. Which might explain the thing that catches my eye far more than the ledger. It's a picture of the dog, of the gun, obviously. This revolver here reminds me of that time I stupidly picked up a gun on my own. Do not entertain even a single thought of pilfering an article herein, my dear fellow. I assure you, Mr. Windybank would not hesitate to draw that weapon with a speed belying his portly size. Oh, you don't mean he'd commit murder? Blow his brains out? Indeed, in recompense for his blunder. Ah, so if there's a robbery, the first thing he's going to do is to shoot himself. It's a good strategy. I'm sure the burglars will never expect that. But in any case, of course we would never do such a thing. How could you even suggest it? What an assortment of things there are on these shelves here. Crockery, footwear, clocks and watches. Almost anything you care to imagine. Those are forfeited items, offered for sale by the pawnbroker. What does that really mean, though? When you pawn, or colloquially, pop an item, the broker loans you money against its worth. He stores the item for an agreed period of time, after which the loan must be repaid. If not, he is free to display it in his shop for sale, at a price of his choosing. Oh yes, now that you explained it, I'm noticing little price tags on everything. Of course, Simply by paying the agreed interest on the loan, one can extend the period of safekeeping. So you may pawn that black garb of yours without fear, my dear fellow. My treasured university uniform. Never! It embodies my student spirit. Besides, what else would I wear? I don't have any inner clothes to wear. This is my only thing I wear. Oh. Dang it. Now, what do you suppose this rather enormous machine does? It seems to have two little windows for looking through. The one is like picture machines, I think. Allow me to enlighten you, my dear fellows. What you're looking at is a stereoscope. Actually, yeah, okay, yeah, it is one of those picture machines. Fascinating. It is aptly named, I assure you. Look through the eyepieces and see for yourself. Oh, I should be delighted to. Excuse me a moment while I just have a look. Just before you do, there is something I should point out. It is full of pornography. Just to warn you ahead of time. My dear fellows, in order to see the image properly, stereoscopically, as it were, you will need to be cross-eyed. However, if that is beyond you, it is of little consequence today. Alright then, I'm going to try it. Ah, it really is full of porno. Mr. Naruhodo, you must see, at once. Oh, well, alright then. So I need to be cross-eyed like I'm trying to look at my own nose. What the? That's a picture? Okay. I don't believe it. It says a photographic print, but it seems like you could reach out and touch it. Yes. The sense of depth is startling, is it not? Stereoscopes are one of London's many fads. They are often found in little stalls in the park. People queue for hours to see them. Why? Why are people meddling with such black magic? It is no magic, my dear madame. It is, well, far too complicated to explain at the present. We shall save this lesson for another day. Basically, it works the same way as, not quite the same way as 3D glasses, but basically you just have, like, two photographs, and you have the lenses that basically refocus your sight onto both photographs at the same time to kind of create that illusion of depth. That's all they do. That's how it works. It's a very popular thing at the time. And yes, it was used for porn sometimes too. That's why I joked about that. Oh. And why does this calendar say April 1st? I thought it was like... Is it April? I don't know. And that's not a calendar you could easily miss, is it? The 15th of April, today's date. Yes, that's not for sale, I must point out. That's my calendar, you can't buy that. It's an Eastern-style page-a-day calendar. Every night at midnight, I tear out the front page to reveal the following day's date. It really is a big waste of paper. The perfect calendar for a tearaway fellow, such as yourself, Mr. Windybank. And who was it who walked out of here with the wrong violin before? Well, when the agreed storage period has passed without repayment, articles are forfeited, you see. So we have to keep a close eye on the date. It's something of a pawnbroker's obsession, you might say. Oh yes, I can see you're very dedicated to your job. Look at this. Whatever could it be used for? I have no idea. Ah. There's a small catch, just here, look. We're going to open it, aren't we? Oh my! That's amazing! It has some sort of spring-loaded mechanism. Which we'll never manage to put back to the way it was before. What are you two doing? What? Us? Nothing. No, nothing at all. Nothing. Whatever this device is, it seems to have a pair of little windows to look through. I feel as though I've seen something rather similar to this elsewhere, like a stereoscope. Could be like a portable stereoscope. Look at this. Look at this lovely big shiny box bee. That, my dear madame, is a music box. Surely you have such things in your own country. Oh my, yes, but I've certainly never seen one so large before. Shall we listen a while? Ah, what a sublime sound. It's like the music of angels, if they only had like one instrument. I've never heard anything like it before in my life. This particular specimen is of the larger variety, commonly found in public houses and restaurants. There is a metal disc inside on which the notes to be played are recorded. Simply by replacing the disc with another, any music you care to imagine can be played. My goodness, what a simply delightful machine. Indeed. Though their popularity has waned recently with the development of the gramophone, of course. Ah. Science and technology advance at such an overwhelming pace. Who knows what will happen like 50, 100, 150 years from now. What? Only tuppence for it? That ain't fair, and you know it. This is the article belly with a penny. This article's belly with a penny, miss. I cannot offer more. Who is this? Who is this? Sounds like there's an argument brewing over by the counter. Come on, that can't be right. Have you even proper butchers at all? At it? I've seen all I need to see, young girl. Is it Lestrade? Wait, don't we know? I'm sure I recognize her. Oh yes, it's the young lady. From Mr. Mcgildit's trial 2 months ago. Her name is Ina Lestrade, my lord. She's a chancer, owns her crust among large crowds, leaving people of their purpose. Their purposes. What's commonly called a pickpocket. Gordon Bennett, you lot! Hello, Miss Lestrade. I hope you've been well. It takes you a long time to load your gun, doesn't it? Eh, what? You remember me then, do ya? Well, I remember being completely surrounded by smoke, that's for sure. So, what are you doing in here? Down and out like the rest of us? Nothing to eat? Come to pop that black weasel saw a coach, have ya? What is it about this black uniform that makes everyone comment on it? Ah, good day. Unless I'm much mistaken. You would be the young pickpocket who stole our experimental smoke grenade launcher. But I happen to see you still have on you. Ah, Mr. Sholmes. So, you have something of value to pawn, do you? Allow me to see the article, and I shall negotiate with Mr. Windybank on your behalf. Pull the other one. I don't need no help from some stuck-up thief. Get out of my business. Go on, I'll make trouble for you. As you wish, Miss Lestrade. I will happily remove myself from your presence. He's really done it. He's teleported himself away. I'm sorry, but as I said, there really is no room for negotiation here. What is that thing he has in his hand? Some kind of metal disc. And you! Go on! Leave me alone! Oh, Miss Lestrade. Just pretend we aren't here, that we're invisible. We shan't be offended in the slightest. Susato-san can really stand her ground when she wants to. Whatever. What you think of my armband? Would you have a look at... that's strange. Where's my armband gone? What's the problem? Something wrong? Don't suppose. You're looking for this? Yes, but how? And when? And how again? I got a talent for it, haven't I? Diving. That's bordering on black magic. And it makes what I was about to say about my armband seem a little dull. So, what do you want to tell me about then? Nothing, apparently. Somehow, I didn't really think you were the sort of person who'd use a pawnbroker, Miss Lestrade. Yeah? Well, I am, alright. I'm a Londoner, just like everyone else. Not a problem, is it? No, not at all. It's just that, well... Oh, I get it. I know what you're thinking. That thing probably don't even belong to her. Probably got on the dive, didn't she? Yeah, I can see it written all over your chevy chase. Well, I might have been thinking something along those lines. You're not going to deny it, Mr. Naruhodo? Nope, I'm not going to deny it. Alright then, I'm just going to come out and ask you straight. Do you pawn things that you steal from other people? Well, I don't know how best to answer that, really. Suppose, sometimes. You're not going to deny it either, Miss Lestrade. But not this time, alright? I swear. That thing belongs to me. The disc that Mr. Windybank is holding. Perhaps we should see what he has to say about all this. Mr. Windybank, what exactly is this metal disc that Miss Lestrade has brought in? It wouldn't happen to be a disc that goes in a music player, would it? It seems to have hundreds of tiny little bumps on the surface. Ah yes, this is a very primitive form of a data storage device. We call it a music disc at this time period. You see, for use inside a music box. In a music box? What? You don't even know what a music box is. There's one right there, you just looked at it when I walked in. Says you shall not, ain't too savvy, eh? I know what a music box is, I've just never seen one of these discs before, even though there's one right there inside the music box. The small protrusions on the metal disc encode the tune to be played by the music box. You simply insert the disc and set the machine going, and beautiful music plays. It's so incredible. Tell us, what tune is on the disc? Well, I'm afraid I couldn't tell you that. There are so many different types of music box, you see. British-made, German, Swiss, cheese, cheddar. Wait, no, that's cheese, sorry. I have no way of knowing which particular machine this disc was made for. Ah, I see. And that's it in a nutshell. I wouldn't have any customers for an item like this, even if the young lady forfeited it. Really, I'm already offering more than I should at a penny. That's a packet of lies. He told me. He did. He told me. He said it was, well... He? Who? Never you mind. It just ain't right, that's all. That disc's worth good money, I know it is. Well then, you'll have to try your luck at another pawnbroker, won't you? Ah. She's been in here before, of course. This little tatterdemalion. I see. And brought some dubious article or other with her every single time I might had. Dubious? What are you trying to say? I'm a honest customer, me. So, is there something dubious about the disc she brought in today? Well, if only it were that simple. Sorry? What do you mean? What she actually brought in was a storage ticket. Ah, a storage ticket, so what's that? Miss Lestrade has actually come to redeem an article from you today, is that right? Yeah, yeah, that's right. A girl like me has a lot of stuff wouldn't need storing. Alright, yes, that's definitely dubious. The article in question would have been forfeited at midnight tonight. But as she gave me the ticket for it and repaid both the loan and the interest, I was obliged to return the article to her. But what was the article? Do tell us, Mr. Windybank. We're so curious about getting involved in this person's private affairs. This little scamp is wearing it, ma'am. It's the overcoat that she redeemed. Oh. What? What's wrong with that? It fits, don't it? I mean, it's mine, so of course it does. So, what about the disc, then? How does that come into all this? The disc is something else. A new article to pawn if the girl and I can agree on a price. I'm confused. I thought you said Miss Lestrade brought in a storage ticket today. Yes, and she got her item and she wants to pawn a different item, Ryunosuke. Follow the plot. It's really quite simple. Yes, the child bought me a storage ticket and the money owed on it, as you say. For this heavy black coat, which you returned to her care, as I had understood it. That's right, yes. And rather unsurprisingly, as soon as the little ragamuffin put the thing on, she ran rifling through the pockets. Oh, you mean... What? Don't you know it's rude to stare at a lady? Ah, I see. So it came from the pocket of the overcoat, did it? If you mean this disc, then yes, definitely, ma'am. And she immediately tried to pawn it. For quite a high price as well. This is all rather suspicious, I think. Like, why would that be in the pocket of the jacket she just got back? Then she turned around and tried to pawn the thing that was in the jacket. That just seems a little odd. Give it up. I'm just trying to pawn something like anyone else would. Miss Lestrade, may I ask who deposited the overcoat here in the first place? Well, me. Me? It doesn't really appear to be your size. Actually, it looks like it fits her just fine. Me old man. It's me old man's, ain't it? Is it Miss Lestrade?
Is it?
Yes, this is definitely all rather suspicious. Out of my way, please. Whoever this is. Oh, it's... Who's this picture postcard English gentleman? Mr. White. Good day to you, ladies and gentlemen. What's your problem, eh? There is no problem, as long as you remove yourself. I have a matter to discuss with the proprietor. And if you intend to make a problem of it, I shall see you outside, little girl, for the hiding you deserve. Look, ain't it obvious? I ain't done talking with him yet. If you think you're such a gent, you should know to wait in line. Well, you are an impudent little brat, aren't you? As well as a pickpocket. Eh? Who are you? How do you know who I am? The question is, how do you not know who I am? You haven't the courtesy even to remember the faces of your victims, it seems. What? You mean from you? Broker. Yes, sir. I believe this filthy pocket thief has just redeemed an article from you, no? Yes, The article in question belongs to me. I demand for it to be returned at once. Oh my. Now that's a lie. What are you trying to pull? Give me back my overcoat, you rastro. And needless to say, it doesn't fit me, nor does it match my decor. Any music box disc, please? 2? No, you can't have it. You just can't. It's the old man's. Or it was, now it's mine. My goodness, Mr. Naruhodo. This is a very awkward situation. Yes. I think perhaps we should hear both sides of the story in a little more detail. Excuse me, but who are you? One would expect the inquirer to introduce himself first. Though clearly you are not British, so perhaps our ways are foreign to you. Oh, sorry, yes, we're from the Empire of Japan. We're studying here. Oh yes, Japan. I've heard talk of the place. Let me do my little dance. Its inhabitants live on some fiery brown-colored soup, dressed up with exotic spices. You might be thinking of somewhere else. And what was that theatrical gesticulation about? Perhaps, anyway, if you are a gentleman, sir, you offer your own name first, before inquiring after the name of another. Of course, yes, I'm Ryunosuke and I'm a lawyer. Well, a student of law, really. My name is Susato Mikotoba. I am Mr. Naruhodo's assistant. I see. My name is Benedict. Yes. Egert Benedict. Do not dare call me Eggs Benedict, or I will smack you upside the head with my cane and turn your head into an egg. Enchant. He's so refined in how he holds himself and how he speaks, but that name is suspicious. It sounds a lot like a dish. Now to the matter at hand. Do a little dance, show a little love. My overcoat, return it at once. To someone with the style to carry it off. Every move he makes, every breath he takes. Can't stand watching him. Miss Lestrade, is what the gentleman is saying. What do you think? It's all lies, ain't it? Obviously. I swear on my life, I ain't never laid eyes on that dandy before. Let's hear it now, you little ragamuffin. You stole it, didn't you? That ticket you brought in here just now. No, I swear it. I swear to God. It was barely an hour ago. I was walking along the street, minding my own business, when this little gutterling ran into me. I knew at once what had happened. I've been robbed yet again, I thought to myself. Those wretched pickpockets. Yet again. Oh yes, as you can see, I am a man of impeccable style. This isn't the first time that I've been targeted by these backslum scoundrels. Do my little dance? Now then, relinquish my overcoat. Come along now, Mr. Lestrade. Give the good gentleman his coat back. If you're going to cause trouble, I should have no choice but to call the police. Hold on, why does everyone think it's me? Let's look at this dandy cove. And you think I'm the dodgy one? I'm sorry, but no one's going to believe you. Well, what about evidence? Yeah, that thing called evidence. Where's your evidence that I've stolen something, eh? Come on, let's see it. Oh, I have evidence, naturally. You what? Evidence that the article Miss Lestrade redeemed actually belongs to this gentleman. Well, why don't we just see the actual ticket? Wouldn't his name be on the ticket? Of course. Need only consult Mr. Windybank's ledger to know the truth. We'll be able to look up the name of the person who deposited the article in the first place. Yes, brilliant. I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid that won't be possible. Oh? I never ask customers' names, and that's a strict policy of mine. Well, that's not helpful. But why not? Well now, as you can imagine, some of my customers have circumstances to consider. A great many of them prefer to maintain their anonymity. Yes, I see. But then, how can you know if an article belongs to the person asking to redeem it? Oh, it's quite simple. Good, sir. Might I trouble you for the watchword associated with the article in question? Of course. It's Do my little dance. Professor. Yes, that's right. And all the evidence we need. No. Is that written down on the ticket? Is it written down somewhere on the ledger? We can't just, take your word on memory on this. I mean, we need to actually see if it's written down somewhere for it to match up with the item that was in the ledger. But like in a data table, you have keywords. You have keys in a data table, and then you have associated keywords in a data table. That's how a data table kind of works. So you have your key item, then you have your associated terms with that key, and that's how you match up and identify things. So that's basically what we need to do here. You can't just rely on memory alone. This gentleman is the rightful owner of the article without doubt, because I say so. A watchword. Interesting. So, about these watchwords, Mr. Windybank. As I just explained, I never ask customers' names when they deposit items with me. There are many reasons why. Certainly, customers would like to keep their activities secret. That wasn't exactly a subtle glance at Mr. Sholmes now, was it? Great detectives have no dark secrets. None at all. Yes, well, anyway, that's why I always ask for a watchword whenever I set a new article. But did you ask for a watchword when... You didn't ask for a watchword when Mr. Shrog came out and got her jacket, though, did you? Or when Mr. Sholmes got his violin from you? Being a little inconsistent here. In many ways, it's like the secret combination of numbers used to unlock a vault. The date of the deposit, a description, and a watchword uniquely identifies each item. And of course, then I give the store's ticket to the customer. When someone comes to redeem something, I ask for the ticket and the watchword. Always? Did you really always do that? Really? Really? And if that someone tells you the correct watchword, you return the article. That's right, sir. Yes, just as soon as the requisite fee is paid. And I have supplied you with the information you require already. But for the avoidance of doubt, the article in question is an overcoat, deposited 2 months ago on February 15th. So that would have been 2 months ago. Yeah. On the day, yeah. With a watchword of Professor. All perfectly correct information, sir. But how? Really, this is beyond a joke now. There is no further room for doubt. That doesn't match his outfit at all. So let that be an end to the matter. And thank you for your custom, Mr. Eggert Benedict, sir. With such reasonable rates of interest, I may even decide to come back. This is why I hate grown-ups. Just because I'm a diver, everyone thinks that makes me a liar. And the contents of the coat pockets, if you please, broker. But of course, sir. Here is the disc for you. Just this one. Pardon, sir? I was expecting another. That is... I deposited another. Another disc. Oh dear. I regret to inform you, sir, that what was deposited with me was merely the overcoat. The disc happened to be in one of the pockets, but I was completely unaware of it until now. So, Gutterling, you're hiding more of what's rightfully mine, are you? Says who, eh? I don't know nothing about it. Very well. Then I shall bid you farewell. Say goodbye to style. I will dance to you and hypnotize you. Wait a minute, that disc is mine. Oh. Ah! What do you think you're doing, you little tramp? You've drawn blood, you filthy animal. Oh my, yes, there's blood on the disc. It's because of those sharp little bumps. The man must have scratched his finger on them. I found it first, alright? I mean, it belonged to me old man. So you're not having it. Or you take it. Me? Why you want me to take it? If I ain't alright, they'll have it off me again. So you keep hold of it. And let others take it from me. Miss Lestrade, why is this so important? Music in a mechanical box. You there, in the black library. Hand that disc to me at once, please. No, don't. He's lying. The grown-ups are all liars. What do I do now? How am I going to resolve this? Let's take a look at the disc here. For Mcgildit. Interesting. Look at all the little bumps on the disc, they're so tiny. Yes, the protrusions are called pins, and they pluck the teeth of the comb to make notes. And just on the edge, there's a small amount of blood. Yes, the blood of the mysterious Mr. Egbert Benedict. When Miss Lestrade tried to grab the disc from him, the pins scratched his fingers, it seems. Like when you're grating some daikon radish and accidentally catch your finger. Owie, 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 owie. Ouch. Just thinking about it hurts. It puts me off eating radish. We gotta be careful with those graters. Grate your skin right off. Oh, there's a little scrap of paper stuck onto the reverse side of the disc. Look. And a scribbled word or two. It looks like somebody's name. For Mcgildit. Mcgildit? It couldn't be. But it is, Mr. Naruhodo. A name I shall never forget, for as long as I live. But why? Why is his name on this? Wow, Mr. Straw is really looking daggers at that mysterious gentleman. I need to do something to calm things down before she loses control and attacks him again. Mr. Winnebeck is clearly at a loss here. I have to do something about this before he reaches for that revolver again and tries to shoot himself. Mr. Sholmes, you want to help out here? Mr. Sholmes. What are you examining with such keen interest there, and why is your hand in your pants? Are you enjoying a bar of caramel, I see? So, you found me at last, Mr. Naruhodo. Sorry? After that young pickpocket sent me on my way, I was forced to lurk in the shadows. Truly ostracized, as the rest of you partook in the jovial atmosphere of fellowship. I had nothing to occupy my mind. I was too ashamed to let society see what my downfall had done to me. So feigning mock interest, I pretended to examine the tedious trinkets in this desolate place. Whilst, as you shrewdly observed, gnawing on the only friend I have left. The 7% solution of caramel. Pray, do you not claim to understand the depths of my despair, Mr. Naruhodo? But how could you? I was so lonely, so desperately lonely. Then, why on earth didn't you rejoin the conversation? Things have gone from bad to worse here, you know. Yes, I overheard much of your conversation. Or rather, in my craving for human contact, my ears devoured every word that was uttered. You really were sad, weren't you? Poor Mr. Sholmes. I feel simply awful for you. It would seem that my interferences are correct. Inferences. Oh, surely you're not about to tell us. Bet you solved the entire case once again. My dear madame, sometimes I wonder, were my genius for deduction to be commoditized, how much could I pawn it for? It seems Mr. Sholmes has had another of his flashes of inspiration. But who knows if it'll help to resolve the situation between Mr. Strahd and the mysterious gentleman, who's named after an egg dish. What's the right thing to do here? Deduction! Well, Mr. Strahd, it would appear you find yourself in something of a predicament. Where the blue blazes have you been, eh? Pardon? When a lady's in trouble, a true gent's supposed to be there to help. Straight away! Not an hour later. He's dead. He just killed the great detective. I guess we have to figure it out on our own now. Well, it's not going to be quite the same without him now. It's just... Yeah, okay. Continue. Harsh. And who, pray tell, are you? Mr. Egbert Benedict. You have, in my eyes, a veritably encyclopedic array of curiosities about your person. Nevertheless, there are two immovable conclusions I have drawn. I beg your pardon. The first is this. The true reason for your visit to the pawnbrokery today is something you have not yet revealed. And the second is this. A considerable crime is in contemplation, one you will orchestrate with intent to steal a vast sum of money. Well, Mr. Benedict, what say you to my deductions? How? It's turned as white as a hard-boiled egg. It would seem that once again, Mr. Sholmes has made a flawless deduction. Has he? We need to double-check him. Just who do you think you are, sir? Ah, yes, as I hoped. That is precisely the pained expression I was looking for. So, shall we begin? The time has come for yet another Sherlock Sholmes Logic and Reasoning Spectacular Part 3, the sequel to the sequel of the last part. Revengeance. First of all, we must ask ourselves on what business you ventured to this pawnbrokery today. You claim to have followed this pickpocketeer, having had the redemption ticket stolen from you on the street. But that is most certainly a lie. The real truth is something quite different. As revealed by that which you hold in your hand. Yes, what brought you to this shop in the first place is the staff recruitment flyer. The piece of paper in your hand is a staff wanted advertisement from this very shop. Yet even the most unobservant would soon realize that a man of your appearance has no need of such employ. In other words, there is some ulterior motive for your actions. The cane which you unwittingly clutch to your person exhibits an incontrovertible contradiction. What utter rot! I've had this cane for years. The contradiction of which I speak is, of course, the missing ferrule. Actually, I just noticed that the initials on the cane are AG. Isn't that... I forgot what Mcgildit's first name was. I wonder if it's like Mcgildit's cane. The end of any walking cane would be terminated with a metal ferrule to protect the wooden tip. And yet, detailed analysis shows the wooden tip of this stick to be utterly bare. Yeah, it has AG on it. So it's not his cane. Therefore, there is only one conclusion. The rod which you hold in your hand, which appears to be a walking cane, is in fact no cane at all. Your recoil, sir. Is something wrong? And in your recoiling, you inadvertently facilitate the answer of the next conundrum to present itself. Namely, what is the truth behind this rod you bear? Yes, your reaction betrays the truth. The handle, which you evidently would like to conceal, is the key to understanding this riddle, you see. One moment I saw it, my suspicions were aroused. What walking cane demands such a stout handle? Mused I. But of course, as I said, this is no walking cane. No, that rod is a broken handle of a shovel. What? That is a huge leap in logic right there. That's a huge leap. What? Are you insane? And now, having determined this undeniable truth, the conclusion is clear. Your true motive for coming here was to take employment at this establishment in order to excavate the ground beneath the premises. What a calculated crime you have conceived, sir. A wickedly calculated crime. That is way off. That's way off. Now, Mr. Benedict, let us continue. For we must expose the details of this elaborate crime you have in the planning. This is utterly absurd. You suggest that I, a gentleman, intend to excavate the ground beneath this pawnbrokery with a broken shovel. What on earth do you propose I could expect to find there? Do a little dance? Some long-forgotten treasure, I suppose? Save for such a fanciful theory, what possible reason could I have to do as you say? Oh, but there is ample reason. As you are only too well aware, Mr. Benedict. Ah, and as your furtive glance is more telling than I could have hoped. What? Let us consider what would motivate a man to infiltrate a shop such as this and covertly dig beneath its floor. The answer is revealed by the council notice on the counter to which your eyes were inadvertently drawn. This letter gives notice of public works to be carried out in the local area. And according to this enclosed plan of the upcoming sewerage works, beneath this shop runs a sewer that adjoins another, one that runs under the bank on the opposite side of the road. This madness has entered the sewers now, has it? By excavating the ground beneath our feet, you would gain access to the waterway. That flows in very close proximity to the great vault of the financial institution opposite. What are you... In summary, sir, you devised a master plan to pull off an elaborate bank robbery by dint of the underground tunnels. Master plan? Which brings us to at last, to the final chapter of this lurid scheme. With that plunder did the thief hope to make off from the underground? With what plunder did the thief hope to make off from the underground vault of the bank? Are you quite serious? Having consulted with Scotland Yard some days ago, I happen to know the answer. But naturally, the answer is no secret to you, is it, Mr. Benedict? I have no idea what you're talking about. Allow me to present a rather interesting piece of evidence. You see, this picture postcard tells us all we need to know. A postcard of the Great Exhibition? I'm afraid you've quite lost me. Currently, in the final stages of preparation, the Great Exhibition will soon be underway, and the government has provided extra funds to complete its centerpiece, the Crystal Tower. Funds that currently sit in the vault of the bank, on the other side of this road. Pardon? Yes, the considerable crime you have been contemplating is the theft of that which sits in the vault of that bank. The special reserve funds for the Great Exhibition. Of course, that is top secret police information, so keep it under your hat, please. Oops. Thus concludes Herlock Sholmes' great deduction of the pawnbroking puzzle. Mr. Sholmes. Well, Mr. Naruhodo, an impressively upbeat deduction for a detective racked with loneliness, would you not agree? Was it true what you said about the bank over the road and what was in its vaults? Indeed, though few know of its existence. It is one of the government's most closely guarded secrets. Gregson told me, in the strictest confidence. But you just announced it to everyone here. Rather loudly, in fact. Ah. And if it's such a big secret, how would Mr. Benedict have come to find out about it? There can be but one explanation for that. Clearly it is because the man is a criminal. And criminals know everything. But what if he didn't know anything about the money in the vault? If he is a criminal, as you said, then buying a brand new shovel is sure to be the first thing he does. Now that you revealed the secret. Oh. Or if he doesn't, maybe Mr. Windibank will. He already has plenty of shovels here, after all. Oh, my life. I assure you I'm not so unscrupulous. Well, hopefully this has not taught you a valuable lesson. Sensitive information must be handled with the utmost of care. One can never be sure that someone privy to secrets won't disclose them. And once the word is out, it's out. Perhaps I'll think twice before confiding in you next time, Mr. Sholmes. An excellent idea, Mr. Naruhodo. An excellent idea. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo, you know what to do, I'm sure. Yes, let's listen to that great deduction again, and see if we can massage it into shape. Very well, then. Let us start once more from the beginning. of Sherlock Sholmes Magnificent, Logic and Reasoning Spectacular. Part 7. So, by Mr. Sholmes' reasoning, Mr. Benedict came in here in order to apply for a job so he could dig down through the floor. Yes, in an attempt to tunnel into the sewers to gain access to the money in the vault of the bank across the road. Sounds very elaborate. But he wouldn't get very far with a broken shovel, would he? No, I think it's fair to say his motives lie elsewhere. The question is, where? And what did bring Mr. Benedict here at this particular point in time? His stylish hat. That silk-top hat is whiter than white. Only an English gentleman could hope to carry off something so bright. But it looks so incongruous with the black overcoat, don't you think? Perhaps it's the latest London fashion. I mean, that's just guesswork, of course. How about Mr. Naruhodo? I think you look very fetching in a white top hat. Well, you know, I think I might look rather incongruous with my black university uniform, so... yeah. Oh, what's this? I just like how we can just freeze time and just maneuver around somebody and examine everything. Oh. Look at all the scribbled notes on the back of the flyer here. I don't believe it. What is it? Listen to what it says. Name, Gina Lestrade. Height, 5'2". Green cap, scruffy waistcoat, grubby white shirt, blue satchel, ragged. It's a detailed description of Miss Lestrade. Goodness. There's even a sketch of her hat and all. A very poorly drawn sketch. Although, if he showed it to her, she'd fire that smoke grenade launcher in his face for sure. And look, the details of the shop have been written down here too. Windybank's Pawnbrokery, Baker Street. Redemption deadline, April 15th of April. Which is today's date. Why would Mr. Benedict have all the information scrawled on the back of that piece of paper? That's a proper English gentleman's cane, isn't it? Look at the beautifully polished brass on the handle. Yes, but Mr. Sholmes is right. It's not the sort of handle you usually see on a cane. Perhaps it's the latest London fashion. I mean, that's just guesswork, of course. Perhaps you could adopt a cane, Mr. Naruhodo. It might rather suit you. I have a feeling it might argue with the sword around my waist. I don't need a cane arguing for sword. Alright, it can't really be Mcgildit's cane because it's AG, that's right. If it was Mcgildit, it would probably be M on the back, you know. Anyway, this is probably what we want.
Take that!
Yes, what brought you to this shop in the first place is the info about Miss Lestrade. Quite so, my dear fellow. It would appear that the writing on sketch on the reverse of the flyer pertained to the pickpocket Miss Lestrade and to Mr. Windybank's pawnbrokery here. Ah. You originally told us. that you had merely given chase after Miss Lestrade stole the redemption ticket from you. But that, sir, is a thinly veiled lie. It is the information on the back of your flyer that led you here today, by which I mean here to Winnebank's pawnbrokery, and today, the redemption deadline of that overcoat. So, you waited outside for the young girl matching the description you had written down to arrive. And you have gone to some lengths to hide the reasons for your pursuit of Miss Lestrade. In other words, there is some ulterior motive for your actions. What's a ferrule? It's the metal cap commonly found on the end of a cane, Mr. Naruhodo. Please don't embarrass me anymore, okay? Ah, the bit that makes the nice clacking sound on the pavement. Yes, exactly, and Mr. Sholmes is right. It appears to be missing on this cane. But it doesn't actually look broken, does it? No, it doesn't. Though gentlemen certainly did recoil when Mr. Sholmes identified the cane as suspicious. In other words, there's some secret about the cane that Mr. Benedict would rather we don't know. What could it possibly be? Look here, Miss Susato. There's some letters on the handle. Ah, yes, these must be initials, I think. In the West, it's customary for people to engrave their belongings with the first letters of their names. So Herlock Sholmes would be HS, you mean? That's right. And the initials on this cane, obviously... Oh. A.G. Why does it feel as though that's not quite right?
Take that!
The contradiction in which I speak is, of course, the initialing. A most astute observation, wouldn't you say, Mr. Egbert Benedict? We are led to believe, sir, that your initials are EB. Yet in a most possessive manner, you have in your grasp a cane bearing the initials AG. An incontrovertible contradiction indeed, would you not agree? No. You're wrong. This cane isn't... You said before that you had that cane for years. So don't try to tell us that you just borrowed it from a friend or found it in a park. In short, though you hold yourself to be a gentleman, you have withheld your true name. Namely, what is the truth behind this rod you've been... Oh, this is the shovel thing. Let's consider the bare bones of what's happening here. Miss Lestrade redeemed that fine-looking overcoat, and now a mysterious man has appeared, introducing himself with a fake name, and claiming that the overcoat belongs to him. But we know that he actually identified Miss Lestrade from a written description, which suggests that everything else he's told us is untrue. So what we need to do here is somehow prove that the overcoat cannot possibly belong to him. Alright. Let's examine the overcoat then. Oh, there is a tear in it. Oh, the seam on the shoulder there is coming apart, look. So it is. Do you know, a moment ago Mr. Benedict was surprised by something that was said. I thought I heard him make a rather strange noise. It sounded a bit like a tiny growl. But now I think it was probably the sound of his seam ripping open. If you look closely, it does seem to be a very tight fit, like it doesn't fit him. The sleeves are stretching to bursting, and he wouldn't have a hope of fastening it at the front. If he were to run around in it, I'm sure the whole thing would fall apart. That I'd like to see. Sorry. So how can we make Mr. Bennett run around? I'm really curious. Let's try it. She's really giving this some serious thought, isn't she? Alright, it's probably this. So
Take that!
a split seam, which you evidently would like to conceal, is the key to understanding this riddle, you see. Ah. Yes, because the overcoat is rather obviously a poor fit. Having forced it over your broad shoulders, the seam is already breaking apart. My suspicions were aroused from the outset. When you so boldly lied about your name and so boldly waylaid this pickpocket. Ah. This catalog of untruths has all been for one very specific purpose. To steal the article that the young girl redeemed from Mr. Windybank. Ah! But what really irks me is this. The considerable crime I initially imagined has been considerably curtailed. Now, Mr. Benedict, let us continue. You suggest that I, a gentleman, designed to wheeze the filth some tawdry article of pawnage. Had you forgotten that I redeemed the article in the proper manner, using the watchword? Had I not been the one to deposit in the first place? How could I possibly have known the relevant details? Nesepaz. Oh, but the watchword can be discovered. As you are only too well aware, Mr. Benedict. Ah, no further glance is more telling than I could have hoped. What? Let's consider how one might come to learn a secret watchword relating to the pawned property of another. The method is revealed by the council notice. The direction of the deduction must change rather dramatically now, I think. Yes, no more talk of tunneling into the sewers. Which is a pity because it all sounded rather exciting. Anyway, you can't deny that this mysterious gentleman did know the watchword. Yes, Professor. If you didn't know that word, Mr. Windybank would never allow you to redeem the article. Or, looking at it another way, if you did know that word, Mr. Windybank would allow you to redeem the article whether it was yours or not. So the question is, could this gentleman have found the watchword out somehow? Well, let us examine the scene. Nolet. Look at this, Miss Susato. Ah, it appears to be a memo that Mr. Windybank has scribbled to himself. Let's see, what does it say? Oh, Professor. Mr. Windybank must make a note of the watchwords his customers give him right before their eyes. But does he make any... You can't just write the watchwords down on a notepad. It's like without any linkage to the item or... it doesn't work that way. There's like at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different words written on that notepad. And the dude just happened to guess the correct one. And in an alarmingly clear script as well. Actually looks like a mess. Oh dear, I don't know where to look. Who knows what other secrets I might see? Oh no, I must cover my eyes. This is Mr. Winnebank's gun. Yes, loaded with only one bullet, he said. It appeared that being a pawnbroker is a very life-or-death profession. That might just be this particular establishment. As I said before, if anything goes wrong here, his first reaction is to shoot himself, so... It's not a very effective strategy. Anyway, I think this is probably what we need to present here.
Take that!
The method is revealed by the notelet on the counter to which your eyes were inadvertently drawn. Yes, the broker here follows the same procedure whenever a customer comes to redeem an article. He asks the customer for the watchword and notes down the response uttered on a notelet he has to hand. Then he consults his ledger and confirms whether or not the watchword matches that of the article in question. I would expect nothing less of a diligent pawnbroker. But his diligence clearly has its disadvantages. Oh, there is like nothing on the other side of this pawn shop, is there? Is this empty? What are you talking about? It is increasingly apparent that you were present in this shop before your accusation against Miss Lestrade. In all likelihood, you followed her inside and then observed her talking to Mr. Winnebank. When the diligent broker made a note of the watchword, or, as is his common practice, you observed him writing the word Professor on the notelet beside the ledger. Okay, so she gave the correct watchword to him. So why did he think she... So why did this pawnbroker think that it wasn't... This pawnbroker dude is awful. And that's, was the master plan you devised to steal the pawned article from the young Miss Lestrade? Master plan? Which brings us at last to the final chapter of this lurid scheme. Why would you go to such lengths to redeem that particular article from this pawnbroker? Are you quite serious? Well, an ill-fitting overcoat hardly seems to justify the effort, much less a worthless music box disc. But naturally, you had very good reason to make them yours, didn't you, Mr. Benedict? I have no idea what you're talking about. Allow me to present a rather interesting piece of evidence. This picture postcard. And where did you get that from? The articles we're talking about are the overcoat and the music box disc that was in one of the pockets. Which, according to Mr. Winnebank, isn't even worth a penny. And yet, this man went to such lengths to steal them. Why? I wonder if perhaps... we already have the evidence we need to explain it, Mr. Naruhodo. Could we? Really? I'd better have a look through all the evidence we've collected so far. I'm guessing it's because of this here, right? For Mcgildit. The surname of the man whose innocence you secured in a trial 2 months ago, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, a trial I'll never forget. Not least because of the tragic accident appalled in which Mr. Mcgildit was horribly burned alive to death in the carriage. But why would his name be on this music box disc? I'm afraid I have absolutely no idea. But one thing seems certain. This surely cannot be a simple coincidence.
Take that!
You see, This music box disc tells us all we need to know. What's that? On the back. It reads, for Mcgildit. Ah. Ah, Sonny, remember me? You're a rich Irishman. Yep. I'm still around in spirit and form and haunting you. Yep. Ah, Mr. Magnus Mcgildit. The unfortunate philanthropist who perished in curious circumstances at the Old Bailey 2 months ago. A prominent man in London, though his lone-mongering demonstrated a distinct lack of scruples. So, you're an associate of his, are you? Or perhaps a subordinate? Mr. Mcgildit was a man of unusually small stature, in fact. He was precisely the right size for that overcoat that you squeezed yourself into. Ugh. Your true identity remains shrouded in mystery, Mr. Eggert Benedict. But the final conclusion here is crystal clear. The reason you came to this pawnbrokery today was to retrieve an article left behind by the late Magnus Mcgildit. Ah! Elementary. Well, well, Mr. Magnus Mcgildit. Not a name I expected to hear in these circumstances. Mr. Sholmes, I am afraid there is something very troubling on my mind. Pray tell, Miss Susato. Well, according to what Mr. Windybank told us earlier, today was the final day in which the coat could have been redeemed, was it not? Yes, ma'am, that is correct. Today would be precisely 2 months since it was first deposited. Well, today is the 15th of April, so 2 months ago today. It would have been the 15th of February, sir, that's right. It's all carefully recorded in my ledger. Deposited at 10:30 p.m., I see. What? But that suggests... Yes, 15th of February. It's precisely the day in which the omnibus murder took place. And 10:30 in the evening. It's precisely the time at which the terrible events were unfolding. Suggestive is not the word. It would seem the matter is entirely beyond coincidence. You are, of course, at liberty to make whatever outlandish deductions you choose. However, I must insist you hand over the music box disc now. It would be a terrible shame for you to return to your native land in a box. Ah, what do I do? What should we do? Let's save the game. No. There are some things a man must protect at all cost. This may well be one of those things. Then again, it may not.
Hold it!
But... Mr. Windybank, this is my shop. I can't allow any harm to come to my customers. If that were to happen, I'd have to shoot myself. I should have to take my own life. Mr. Windybank, no, that's not the right thing to do. Alright, that's enough. Oh, Gregson, yeah. Inspector Gregson. That's right, Sunshine. The alarm was raised on one of our dedicated emergency lines. So we got here as fast as we could. Now what's all this about, eh? Oh, praise be, you're here at last. I was moments away from forfeiting my own life in my very own establishment. It would seem you have the upper hand. And you are arrested. Right, you lot have got some explaining to do. I don't appreciate being bothered with some petty argy-bargy. Petty? Mr. Winnebank very much nearly met with us in. He was about to shoot himself for really dumb reasons. Yeah? Yeah, by his own gun as far as I can tell. Oh dear. And the whole of Britain could meet with its end if I don't get to the bottom of this, well, the case I'm supposed to be working on. What? What on earth is the case, Inspector? Spare no detail, Gregson. I might have said a little too much. No matter, it's nothing to do with you lot. Anyway, sir, you're gonna have to come with me down to the station. Yes, fish, yep. But of course, Inspector. Fish. Infinite. Fish. And chips. Infinite. Infinite fried cod. And fried potato. I forgot to have my fish and chips today. Makes me sad. But I'll have some tomorrow. Or not! Ah! He's getting away! Get after him, lads. Whistle the beat officer, too. Sir! Damn it. I spent too much time eating my fish and chips in front of him and not apprehending the suspect. There's been a spate of thefts at pawn shops around here recently. Yes, I'm gonna have to stop soon because my voice is getting so messed up. Oh, my mouth's getting so dry. I know I keep drinking water, but it's just like not helping. So we fitted emergency buttons underneath the counters for brokers, so let us know when there's trouble. Oh, Inspector, I was very worried for a while. Very worried indeed. Now then, Mr. Permanently in Mourning. Oh, yes? I'll be taking that whatever it is of Mcgildit's down to the yard, thank you very much. So hand it over. I'll hit you with my fish and chips. Oh wait, that's not my gun. Oh, yes, of course. No, don't give it to him. It's mine, that is. Mine. I'm sorry, miss. But anything belonging to Mcgildit has to be taken in as evidence now. As evidence? If the police demand something as evidence, my dear fellow, we have no choice but to capitulate. It's all yours, Inspector. And so, we handed Mr. Mcgildit's disc over to Inspector Gregson. And were summarily turfed out of the shop and onto the street. Is that the end of that part? Yes, okay. Good. Alright. So, I don't really know what the case is. I'm assuming it's going to be the case that Gregson is working on. And that's, like, okay, so stuff with Mcgildit is coming back into play now, so I guess we'll find out what that is next time when we continue with The Adventures of Ryunosuke Naruhodo. Japan man, lawyer man in England man. In England. Anyway, yes, that's going to be it for tonight. Thank you for watching, and I will continue next week sometime. Have a good night, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.